All right, Dolphins fans, Jacob here, Miami Dolphins Syndicate. Before we get into the video, I want everybody here watching to go into the comments and call our co-host Donovan an absolute scumbag for what he just did in our fantasy football league, getting Alvin Kamara for absolute crumbs, for Michael Wilson, George Pickens, and Ty Chandler. Got two other pieces back in return, but absolute crumbs for getting the best running back in the league for fantasy football. So let Donovan know down below he's a scumbag for what he just did. A guy who's never played fantasy football is who he got Alvin Kamara from. So let us know, let him know down in the comments how bad of a person he is, while I tell you about how bad of a coach that Mike McDaniel is. So you see the title of the video, is Mike McDaniel a fraud? Mike McDaniel may be a fraud. And obviously, big, bold claim there. And especially coming off the season last year, where last year, best offense in the league, number one overall offense, highest scoring offense. Tua leads the league in passing yards. Tyreek Hill had a genuine 2,000-yard hopeful season. And then the start of this season, Jaguars game, second half of the Jaguars game is good. Everything aside has been terrible. Whether Tua has been in the game, whether Tua has not been in the game, it has not been good. And I think the main problem with what's going on with Miami Dolphins is, unfortunately, the man who was responsible for all the success last year, and that is Mike McDaniel. Mike McDaniel has set this Dolphins team up so backwards from conventional wisdom, from what the NFL is set up to be, like what a successful team is successful, or what a successful team does to become successful. And there are certain principles that very successful teams, dynasties throughout NFL history have achieved, and that is, for one, a really good quarterback, which, look, arguments can be made about Tua, good quarterback, great quarterback, bad quarterback, opinions in the midst. We know he's probably somewhere quarterback between 8 and 15, somewhere in that range, but good to great quarterback, good offensive line, good running game, good defense, good head coach. What the Miami Dolphins have done is stripped away so much of what is important to build a legitimate team, and it is all flash with very little substance. And the NFL is starting to catch up with what the Miami Dolphins are doing with their offensive scheme. Seattle Seahawks, I mean, primarily just ran cover two all day long, and that was a recipe that we saw 2 years ago the San Francisco 49ers do when we were on our winning streak, and just completely took away the passing game that time with Tua. Everything except for a long bomb over the top to Tyreek Hill that he was able to get over the top of the safeties. But really, all defenses have to do is play a cover two shell, move the safeties where you would normally post up your safeties in cover two, move them back about 5 yards, move your middle linebackers back about 2.5 yards. So, you're looking at that, just doubling the space where they would normally be covering, moving back just a little bit. And the Dolphins completely forget how to operate and do not know what to do. It is a big play offense that has to have big plays to be sustainable, and that speaks with that's transparent, and we see that with what the Dolphins have done so far this season. The last ranked offense in points per game, 32nd most points per game in the league this year. Can't run the ball that well either. And even at times when we do run the ball well, when there is a 8-yard gain here, start off a drive with an A-Chan, nice outside run, or even we saw him in between the tackles, really just in the first quarter against the Seahawks, it's completely empty calories, and it's something that the Dolphins immediately go away from. They're almost intimidated by the idea of letting the ground game get them into drives and then let it sustain long drives through the running game. I understand that this interior offensive line is terrible, which is something else we'll get to that we'll speak about here in a second. But the Dolphins are okay with first and second down on the very first first down opportunity of the game. Hand the ball off to Devon Achane, send the team up in third and second. And once we get into that position, all hell breaks loose. Third down percentage isn't even that good. We are currently 18th in third down percentage, 24th in fourth down percentage. The red zone, dear Lord, can we just run the ball effectively in the red zone? 31st in red zone percentage in the NFL. The team refuses to rely on the rushing attack, and that is large in part due to how poor this offensive line is. Now, Teron Armstead, every single season he's been on the Dolphins, we say that he's held together by shoestrings and glue, and that is clearly apparent again this season. Somehow got a concussion. I have no idea how that happened on Sunday, but concussion, eye injury, shoulder injury, everything can go possibly wrong with this man. It does. But he's not the issue. We knew coming into the season that when he's healthy, great tackle, fine. Obviously, we know he's going to miss some time, but He's played in every single game. He's played poorly in the last 2 games, probably most likely because of his injuries. Austin Jackson on the other side, okay, cool. He's doing fine as far as I'm aware. But that interior offensive line just completely abandoning the interior of the offensive line, and we have seen how opposing teams have been able to hunt us through the interior of the line and completely disrupt this offense. This is a timing-based passing scheme, which means that players, wide receivers, running backs, tight ends, skill position players in general are expected to be a certain place at a certain time in each individual particular play. And we've seen multiple times how just one little miss up in a route, whether you cut a route too short, go a little too long, cut in not sharp enough, right? We've seen Robbie Anderson earlier this year, Chase Claypool last year, just the smallest minute detail in how the wide receivers get to the positions they're asked to be in. If that is just thrown off a little bit, this offense is thrown off entirely. And a large part of that is being able to disrupt in the middle, especially when Tua is back there, a smaller quarterback, disrupt his line of vision. So if he's a little bit off and the receiver's a little bit off, we've seen interceptions because from that time and time again from this Miami Dolphins offense. So the running game is, I call it completely empty calories. A channel have a, again, 8-yard carry, and then they'll just completely go away from it because they know they cannot sustain drives that way. They completely abandon the interior of the offensive line. And then the defense, I understand that it was going to be very difficult to keep Christian Wilkins, to be able to keep Andrew Van Ginkel, right? And some of the other pieces on that defense, like Jerome Baker, I understand that. But they've completely abandoned the defensive side of the ball, except for Jalen Ramsey and our younger guys, where you look at Javon Holland, has not had a great season, was out of place on that long touchdown to DK Metcalf on Sunday. Jalen Phillips, I think he had like 1 or 2 sacks, maybe. I don't even know if he's had 2 sacks, but coming back from that Achilles, obviously he's not going to be at 100%. Chop Robinson has pretty much been a non-factor on the other side of the offensive line. Calais Campbell is a decent signing, but they've let go some of their guys that are coming into the primes of their careers, substituting them out for guys who are at the end of their careers, looking at Kendall Fuller, looking at Jordan Poyer, looking at Calais Campbell, completely abandoning the defensive side of the ball and just saying this will be good enough as long as our offense is good enough, and currently neither are good enough. A lot of people I know have gripes with Chris Grier, and look, I'm pretty middle of the road with Chris Grier because he's had some really nice swings that he's hit on, and some pretty nice swings that he's certainly not hit on, and it seems like a year-by-year study for Chris Grier. It's just so baffling how sometimes he can be so good and also so bad. And we also find that with our head coach. Sometimes so good when everything's going so well for the Miami Dolphins last year. Best offensive of the league. A high-scoring offense, can produce yards ad nauseum. Tua leading the league in passing. Tyreek Hill could have easily been Offensive Player of the Year, 2,000-yard season had he not had his injury. I understand all of that. But now teams are figuring out what the Dolphins do. The Dolphins are not a physical football team. They're a very indisciplined football team. Looking at the penalties, 12 penalties again on Sunday. Having to use more timeouts because you can't get the play call off in time. You're not physical. You can't run the ball. This timing offense, all you have to do is step back a little bit and disrupt the interior of the offensive line, get into his line of vision. Good chance if you get a hand on him, you might actually hurt him and he's out for a few games. Defense on the other side is basically in geriatric care with some of them, with how old this is. This team is so old, and yet you're not seeing many of those experienced players play to the top of their game. Is anybody on the Dolphins right now playing to the top of their game? I said going into Sunday, this was going to be such a big moment for Mike McDaniel to prove how good of a coach he is. He would have required to bust out a pretty, I don't even think a coaching masterclass, but we needed to rely on our coaching to be able to draw up schemes on the offensive side of the ball that we know you're going to lose a lot of the flair, and I keep using the term, it's going to be a very vanilla offense with anybody but Tua under center. But that was just downright awful on Sunday. And you look on the other side with the Seattle Seahawks, they didn't do anything ingenious either on offense. If I had to see Noah Fant run a straight line and either move 1 yard to the left, 1 yard to the right, and be magically wide open, if I had to watch that one more time, I was going to lose my mind. The Seahawks were running just as vanilla as an offense on the other side. But you know what they can do? They can run the ball. They can sustain long drives without any big plays. We turn the ball over on downs on our 4-yard line. They go down and capitalize with Zach Charbonnet touchdown. They just nickeled and dimed their way down the field, and it resulted in pay dirt. Dolphins cannot do that. We do not have the luxury to be able to sit back and have a long 13-play drive that eats away 8 minutes on the clock. It is either a 5-play drive resulting in a Tyreek Hill touchdown, Jalen Waddle touchdown, Devon Achane long 60-yard touchdown. It is either that or we go for it on fourth down, and this season, how it's going, again, 26th on fourth down percentage, not getting a lot of the fourth down decisions going our way so far this season. A punt, a turnover, and not getting to the red zone. We're not getting to the red zone, and even when we do get to the red zone, it has not been really good for the Dolphins this season, and this all, to me, falls back on coaching. This team is built incorrectly. Coach, GM, they figure this stuff out together. The GM does mostly what the coach wants them to do. I think Chris Greer and Mike McDaniel have a pretty good relationship for how they want this team to be built. Mike McDaniel has these pieces. He's not utilizing the pieces, and the deficiencies we see across the rest of the team are his fault for how he has designed this team. It is a backwards team. Is it a team that lacks physicality, lacks discipline, it lacks seriousness? Watching the HBO Hard Knocks series last year, a part of me was like, oh my gosh, this is so cool to see the Dolphins, see the personalities. 80% of me was like, oh wow, it's just really cool. But 20% of me in the back of my mind was mindful of how just unserious things seem to be run in that building, and how I'm sure if you took a look at what the Detroit Lions look like, if you look at what the 49ers, the Chiefs look like mid-season when things are going on, I'm sure there's a way more accountability, way more seriousness, way more toughness in those buildings than what you see with the Miami Dolphins. Completely backwards team. So many holes, so many things that we have mismanaged over the last few years, letting players go, building at the wrong positions, allocating money to the wrong positions, and it is clearly getting away from the team. The numbers speak for it. The on-field, what we see from the team speaks for it. Everything is going wrong with this team, and I don't see it really getting any better this week with Tennessee, who is a good quarterback away from being a playoff team. I don't feel great going into Monday Night Football this week. I don't feel great going forward with Miami Dolphins as Mike McDaniel as a coach. I'm not asking for him to be fired. I don't think that's the right decision as of now, but if things don't turn around, if we miss the playoffs even when Tua comes back, if you're looking at a 7 or 8 win season, which I think is very much in the cards going forward, even when Tua comes back, if that's what the team ends up with, then definitely needs some conversations to be made about whether Mike McDaniel is the right coach for the Miami Dolphins. Let me know your thoughts on Mike McDaniel down below. Is he a fraud? I'm not going to go as far quite to say yet that he is a fraud. However, there's certainly a lot of characteristics. If the shoe fits, and the shoe is currently being put on as of now. So let me know your thoughts on Mike McDaniel, what's going on with the Miami Dolphins down below. Hit that sub button, hit that like button. Tell Donovan he's a disgraceful, disgusting human being for fleecing a virgin in the fantasy football community in our league, taking Alvin Kamara for him for absolute scraps. Let him know down below in the comments. Appreciate y'all very much for watching. Have a great rest of your day. Go Dolphins.